put Jody. My mic's not on.
At least you'll see the speaker here. Yeah.
Good afternoon.
There are more signups, right?
Good afternoon. The March 30. Could I have your attention, please? No, it's not on. It's not on.
Brilliant, brilliant.
I can hear him. I just can't be heard. I was thinking
Good afternoon. Could I have your attention, please? It's the March 30, 2015 meeting of the Seattle City Council will come to order.
Touching. Evil.
2000. That's not.
We gotta sing with them. I hope.
try turning off all of them.
Let's just bring up these points when she So, sorry, tell me.
The 2000.
We're going to vote on replacing her.
So I'll speak to the one you just pointed out for faction.
Oh, you're talking about speaking to the overall, the framing of the order.
I'm just going to frame it.
Right.
And then I'm going to say I have an amendment that I'd like to introduce for the cleanup some of the agenda.
Yes.
One to prove that the extension is
Testing. Good afternoon. The March 30, 2015 meeting of the Seattle City Council will come to order.
And then after you speak to it,
Not working.
I will say, Councilman Park, and then we can kind of open the floor for discussion about it.
So, okay. So,
know what's wrong.
procedurally speaking, I don't get to.
I think he just can't speak over everyone.
You can speak to it. You can speak to it first. There we go. What would you prefer?
I would prefer to speak first because then I also have points about, just to clarify what her points are. So.
But hers won't be up yet before us.
Right, so that's why I will when the
TPP
moment I
or-
move and
so why
get a
don't-
second, I'd like to speak to it. And then when everyone gets then I can speak to just that.
Do a mic check.
Hello.
Not working.
We could yell for you. You could repeat it.
Okay, we're going to try this one. This is better. The March 30, 2015 meeting of the Seattle City Council will come to order. Could I ask you to... No, none of them are working.
So why does this happen in our council meetings? So why isn't this all?
Okay, we're going to shout. Little technical difficulties today. Our microphones are not working. To some of you, that might be a pleasant surprise. So the March 30, 2015 meeting of the Seattle City Council will come to order. It's 5 minutes past 2 o'clock in the afternoon. I'm Tim Burgess, the president of the council. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Godin.
Here.
Harrell.
Here.
Licata.
Here.
O'Brien.
Here.
Rasmussen.
Here.
Sawant.
Here.
Bagshaw.
Here.
Clark.
Here.
President Burgess.
Here.
9 present.
Thank you. Adoption of the referral calendar. If there's no objection, the introduction and referral calendar for today will be adopted. Hearing no objection, the referral calendar is adopted. Adoption of today's agenda. If there's no objection, the agenda for today's meeting will be adopted.
Oh, there we go.
Amazing. The agenda for today's meeting is adopted.
Yay.
The minutes of the March 16, 2015 full council meeting have been reviewed. If there's no objection, the minutes will be signed. Hearing no objection, the minutes are being signed. At this time, we'll take public comment on items that appear on today's agenda. We'll take 20 minutes of comment. Each person, when your name is called, please come to one of the microphones at the front of the chamber. Introduce yourself, and there's a clock that will count your 2 minutes. We will begin with Gillian Lazio, I believe, and Chris Peel, followed by Lisa Sawyer.
Not yet.
Well, is there a little...
Hello? Okay.
There you go. Thank you.
Good afternoon, City Council. I'm Jillian Lacasio with the Washington Fair Trade Coalition. Thank you for weighing in today on a policy that will impact our residents for the next century. The U.S. Trade Representative is currently negotiating the biggest trade agreements we have ever undertaken. The Trans-Pacific Partnership and Transatlantic Trade and Investment Partnership together would cover 70% of the global economy. And from what we've seen, would trump wide swaths of our laws in public health, economic justice, food safety, local procurement. Over 600 trade advisors have access to the text and the negotiations, 90% of whom represent corporate interests. The few who do represent civil society, the environment, labor, public health, social justice groups have been protesting for the last 2 years that their recommendations are not being taken seriously. They can't tell us what they've seen, but all of their organizations are in full battle mode. We have every reason to be worried. Yet Congress is being asked to fast-track this agreement through, allowing the president to sign it before it is approved, limiting congressional debate, and not allowing Congress to make any amendments. This is not the way to review regulations this important. Today, more than 60 groups across Seattle have signed a letter calling on Seattle to do the right thing and to pass a strong resolution opposing fast track and send a message to the other Washington: no fast track for secret trade pacts. We also stand with workers, communities, and the environment today with this resolution and the ordinance supporting homeless encampments. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, members of the City Council. My name is Christopher Peel. I live in an encampment in Nicholsville. I am here in support of Council Bill 118310 and the redlining study amendment. We would, because there's literally thousands of people in Seattle, will benefit from more encampments. We would like to thank Mayor Murray for leading this effort, Councilperson O'Brien for introducing this bill, Councilwoman Sawant for important amendments, and all who voted for it. It's very important, and here's why I believe that's why. 16 people have died this year on the streets without shelter. Encampments are safer, they are more cost-effective, and we're talking about helping 300 human beings basically get better access to services, to be put in a situation where it's easier for them to improve their situation, their lives, to get jobs and re-enter the functioning members and willingness of society. It's stable, it's better than being alone. Redlining is very bad. It's important that people be allowed to live everywhere that people should be allowed to live. That's not necessarily individually industrial districts. I would also like to thank you guys for scheduling this on a day when we're talking about international trade, because international trade and American jobs are tied to this issue of homelessness and the giant increase we've had lately with that. 36. In 2015, the One-Night Council on Unsheltered Homeless People showed an unprecedented 21% increase to 3,772 women, men, and children outside in our city. And I think that is absolutely ridiculous. There's something that should be done, and I would like to see some more encampments and more support for people to where they can improve their own situation. There are a lot of people out there working really hard to get back into society, and I think if you guys could support this, it would help a lot. Thank you very much. Please support this Council Bill 118310. Thank you for your time.
Good afternoon, council members. My name is Lisa Sawyer, and I'm here on behalf of Real Change. We're here to support the tenant cabinet ordinance. As you guys probably know, 95 of my fellow Real Change vendors have signed a letter to support. We also support the amendment to study under residential options. Real Change vendors support the tenant encampments because we know that there ain't enough resources for homeless people. People have turned away from shelters every night. Some of us has been there. A lot of us has been there before.
Some of us are still there.
There are not enough affordable housing in Seattle. There's been people sleeping outside, waiting on the waiting list for years. I grew up in Seattle, but I cannot afford it. Tenant campus is not a permanent solution to ending homelessness, but it provides safety and communication for homeless people every night. So please, council members, vote yes on tenant encampments. They need your help and need your support. Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa. Dave Fryboth, followed by Sheldon Prentice and Larry Brown. Dave? Dave Fryboth? Yeah.
Does that count? Hi, I'm Dave Fryboth. I'm the executive at the King County Labor Council. I'm here in support on behalf of the Labor Council, the Fair Trade Coalition's position on Fast Track TPP. I'm encouraged that we're in front of this council, the council that to a person approved the historic minimum wage increase that passed last year. Thank you for that. I'd also like, that's my time. I also like to thank our grassroots activist assistants from Councilmember Licata, O'Brien, and Sawant for making things like this happen. Thank you for that. I also want to point out that in the minimum wage campaign, Councilmember Bagshaw was one of the ones that got training wage. Thank you for that. Councilmember Harrell, one of the unsung key people in the minimum wage campaign. A lot of people took a lot of credit for the minimum wage campaign. A lot of people didn't get credit. You didn't get enough credit for what you did in that committee. So I just want to thank you for that. Look, Councilmember Godden, Union Sister, you've always been there with us. Your door's always open. I want to thank you for your support on past issues. Let's go back to the industrial down zone that some of you may remember, where you took historic vote, brave vote, to protect middle-class jobs in the industrial sector. Thank you, Councilmembers Clark and Councilmember Rasmussen. Councilmember Rasmussen, on transit, a lot of people don't know that when the attacks were coming in on public workers, when there were those that wanted to make public transit workers the problem, you stood with us to fight that back. Thank you. Councilmember Burgess, I always appreciate that even when we may not agree in the beginning, you're open to logic and you're open to see what is really going on. And in this case, I'm confident that we had the right people telling you what was really going on, and I'm confident that when we come to a vote here, they will again have a historic vote from this council on a progressive issue that is going to affect the country. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, everyone.
Dave, you can come down anytime you want. Could you call my wife this afternoon and talk to her about the logic thing? Okay. Selden.
Hello, everyone. I'm Selden Prentice with 350. Thank you so much. 350 is greatly concerned about the investor state resolution process, known as ISDS, because it allows attacks by multinational corporations on laws designed to reduce carbon emissions and critical laws that could be passed here in Seattle, dealing with the health and safety of workers and citizens. I want to make a few points about ISDS that I think there's been some misunderstanding about, and so I would like to make some clarifications. First of all, some defend ISDS by saying the U.S. has never lost such a case. While the U.S. has not lost, it has been sued, and in some cases won on only very narrow procedural grounds. Furthermore, because under current trade agreements, our trade agreement partners are for the most part poorer countries, and the likelihood of a wealthy corporation suing us in those cases has been low. But if the TPP were to pass, this would all change. The number of ISD cases would increase dramatically due to the large number of countries involved and due to the addition of wealthy countries like Japan and Australia. Another important point about ISDS is that the system by itself creates a chilling effect on democratic processes. There are many examples of Canadian jurisdictions dropping laws they had planned to enact after American corporations threatened legal action under NAFTA. So this is really, the whole ISDS process is undemocratic and against our sovereignty. We should admit what the Cato Institute has admitted, that ISDS is a free insurance.
Thank you, Selden. Larry Brown, followed by Mark McDermott, and Monty Anderson.
Good afternoon, council members. Thank you so much for the opportunity to speak on this important issue. Thank you for bringing it before your body. We here support the resolution and ask that you vote that resolution. We represent 30,000 machinists that build the finest airplanes in the world, and we know the importance of trade. We comprise nearly 10% of our nation's export trade, and that's a very positive thing for the balance of trade issue. However, we are exporting more than planes. We're exporting jobs as well, and we have seen that. As a matter of fact, we have a graphic depiction of that I have shown to everybody that I can. The red is what we build, and the not red is the rest. And you can see in subsequent airplane programs why we call this the disappearing airplane. So many jobs are going away because we're not protecting our ability to play on an even playing field. Just recently, we passed the Export Free Trade Agreement, and since 2011, we've seen a 2.3% increase in exports to South Korea, and at the same time, as of 2014, a 23% increase in goods and services exported to the United States from South Korea. These trade agreements are not working to our benefit. And I think, lastly, I would just say that the Trade Promotion Authority is an abdication of the responsibility that Congress has to take a comprehensive look at these trade agreements and have the ability to vote up or down and amend. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I'm Mark McDermott. I'm an activist with Basara and a retired official in President Obama's administration. I'm here to urge you to vote against Fast Track. I want to relate a very short story of a conversation I had with my brother, Congressman McDermott. I called him up and said, "Hey, brother, I need a copy of the TPP. Can you give me a copy?" And he said, "No." And I said, "Well, would you want to give me one?" He said, "Yes." And I said, "Well, why don't you give me one?" He said, "They won't let me have one." I said, "Really? You've been in Congress 27 years and they won't give you a copy?" And he said, "That's right." So then I said, "Well, have you looked at it?" And he said, "Yes, I can look at it. I can go to a secure room with one of my staff. Because I have a national security clearance, we're not allowed to take notes. We're not allowed to take any recording devices, but we are allowed to read it." I said, "Well, how's that feel?" I'll leave that to you. If you want to ask him, you can ask him yourself. I then said, "Well, have you managed to work through, 2,000 or 3,000 pages? And he said, "No, I got quite a ways to go." I said, "Can you remember what is in it?" He said, "Mark, I love you, brother, but don't be ridiculous." Okay? This is funny, but it's not funny at all. This is trampling on the fundamental principle of democracy, that we, the people, have a right to know what our government officials are doing. I will let other people speak to the content of this, but the idea that somebody who's been elected 14 times by the people of the city of Seattle, usually with 80% of the votes, cannot have a copy of something that they're going to get 30 days to discuss is beyond preposterous. This would be a funny movie, except this is about the real lives of real people, not only here, but all over the world. Please vote against Fast Track.
Monty. Monty Anderson, followed by Elliot O'Sheehan, and I believe it's Gabe Fermandel, perhaps.
Hey, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Monty Anderson. I'm with Seattle Building Trades, and like my brother Mark said here before me, you can't put words to what's going on here. It is so outrageous. I represent working class people and, us in unions. We don't take for granted. We work very hard for the standards we have, but all you're talking about here is taking the standards for everybody else and lowering the bar. It's sad that we have unemployment in this city and this state, and we're talking about lowering the bar to where they don't even have jobs to compete for in this state. And I think as a person of labor who we try to lift everybody up and get everybody to a higher level, we take that very seriously. And this here erodes at everything that labor tries to do by getting people middle-class jobs so they can work with dignity, eat, send their kids to college, retire with dignity. That's what this state's about. I can't remember a time where we sat around and said, you know what? Maybe we should lower our standards so we can impress somebody across the ocean, right? That is the most ridiculous talk I've ever heard of. And we've always been a real shining star here. I'm also a representative for my international, and every time I go back to DC, we're really proud to talk about the things that come out of Seattle. The minimum wage, the priority hire, real progressive things for people. And I would just like to say that this is a large step backwards for not just labor, but everybody in this room and in this state. So I would ask everybody to vote no. And thank you very much.
Thank you, Monty.
Hi, I'm Elliot O'Sheehan, and I'm here today as part of Washington CAN's field organizing team. We represent over 44,000 members statewide. Over the past few weeks, we've been talking to constituents here in Seattle and in 5 congressional districts across the state, and we've collected over 600 postcards to representatives against fast-tracking the TPP. The responses we found have ranged from confusion, from not having heard of this issue, to serious concern. But what I think is really striking is that personally, I have not spoken to a single individual who said that they support this trade deal. Major concerns mostly stem from the fact that under this trade deal, corporations would be able to sue states for loss of potential profit. This would have a profound impact on many issues dear to us, such as protecting our environment, protecting consumers, knowing what's in our food, as well as paying workers a livable wage, just to name a few. This would also make it even more difficult to raise revenue to support healthcare, education, and other important social safety nets. The last major concern is the impact that this deal would have on jobs here in the U.S. and here in Seattle. Nobody wants to see more of our jobs exported, and that is exactly what this trade deal would do. Most importantly, the question everyone is asking, if this is a good deal for workers, for our communities, why are lawmakers in such a rush to pass it? Why can't we know what it says or have public input? Fast track undercuts the democratic process. I urge you all to set an example to Congress today and to pass a resolution to oppose the Fast Track Authority on the Trans-Pacific Partnership. Thank you.
Thank you. Either one, you can pull it down lower. Yep.
Okay, yeah, it's working. Hello. My name is Gabriel, and I work with a group of concerned children called Plan for the Planet. Our goals are to plant 1 trillion trees by 2020, to keep fossil fuels in the ground, and to fight for climate justice. We're doing this because climate change will destroy our world. But the secret agreements like the TPP and the things that are trying to push them through, like Fast Track, the TPP does have rules that say that corporations get to sue nations in private trade courts because they claim they might lose money over laws that are designed to protect people or the environment. Here's an example. A company called Lone Pine Resources wanted to frack for natural gas under the St. Lawrence River. The province of Quebec put up a moratorium on fracking just to study it. Then the company used its U.S.-based headquarters to sue Canada in trade court for a whopping $250 million for, off the top of my head, quote, the arbitrary, capricious, and illegal revocation of the enterprise's valuable right to mine for oil and gas. Really? What about the valuable right of the people living along the St. Lawrence to have water free of toxic fracking chemicals? What about their rights to clean air? Cases like this are becoming more and more common under trade agreements. Here's a little close to home. What if companies could sue if our states passed laws that made polluters pay a carbon tax? What if we banned the exploding oil trains that are trying to come through Seattle? What if then? What would happen then? We need to let our Congress know that it is so wrong to fast-track the TPP before they've carefully examined how its rules will affect people and the planet. I hope you will vote to protect the future of your children and children like me by passing the resolution and opposing fast-track. Thank you.
Well done, Gabe. You could be up here someday. So,
Where does he live? Where does he live?
Colleagues, unless there's objection, I'm going to extend the time that we take public comment for another 20 minutes. Rebecca Castilla. I know, we're having trouble with the microphones today. Maybe we didn't pay our bill. I don't know. Next three speakers, Rebecca Castilla, Meg Kennedy, Nicole Grant.
My name is Becky Castilleja. I am an elected member of the Executive Committee of the Sierra Club of Washington, here representing over 5,000 Sierra Club members in Seattle. Trade Promotion Authority, Fast Track, must be opposed. The world-altering provisions of the Trans-Pacific Partnership Agreement deserve and must receive full scrutiny and debate among our elected representatives and the public. It is a Trojan horse. The TPP is not an ordinary trade agreement. The most consequential part of this agreement has nothing to do with trade and everything to do with subordinating the sovereignty of nation states to the obligation of corporations to maximize profits. Trade Promotion Authority, Fast Track, must be opposed. The lack of transparency in the development of TPP texts with very little public awareness, much less input, is a huge concern. Despite the impact it would have on our lives, labor and jobs, access to food, medicines, clean air, potable water, and more, none of the texts have been made public. Our elected representatives are being heavily lobbied to give the President Trade Promotion Authority and essentially approve it without proper scrutiny, discussion, and debate. These sorts of trade agreements undermine all the work we are doing to protect our children's future from environmental disaster due to short-sighted and dangerous economic priorities. Your vote today will urge our representatives to preserve and protect our democracy, our environment, and our future.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, council members, and good afternoon, everyone. It is so amazing to be a part of this. I'm so proud to be a citizen of Seattle. My name is Meg Kennedy, and I came here today to urge this council to support the resolution strongly opposing fast-track authority for the TPP trade deal. I am here representing Central Co-op, a 36-year-old community-owned grocery store with over 13,000 member owners in our community. I speak from the perspective of a small Seattle business that prioritizes fair labor, fair trade, and transparency in our food system and beyond. Our workers are UFCW 21 and International Worker of the World members, and I am on the board of the Washington Fair Trade Coalition. Fast Track would take the people's voice out of the equation and would not give our elected Congress enough time to look closely at what is in this deal or to make amendments. The expansion of the investor-state dispute settlements that will culminate from this trade deal have the potential power to permanently damage our city and state's continual efforts in sustainability and should not be enacted without intense deliberation and understanding of the consequences. We urge you to endorse the resolution strongly opposing Fast Track in your dedication to the well-being of our communities, both local and ultimately global. Thank you.
Thank you. Nicole will be followed by Robbie Stern, Celeste Goulding, and Cynthia Lennett.
Good afternoon. My name is Nicole Grant from the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers, and I'm here to say that my union opposes Fast Track and the TPP. This is an issue that's motivated our members from the rank and file member building buildings in Seattle up to the top to our international in Washington, D.C. And we saw what happened with NAFTA. We lost 200,000 union electrical jobs in Washington, or in the United States. And I remember when Columbia Lighting closed, and we lost 1,000 jobs overnight to Juarez here in Washington. And we don't want to see that happen again. And ultimately, with Fast Track, with TPP, labor's not at the table. We're not at the table like we were when we passed the historic $15 an hour minimum wage with you guys. But we're at the table right now, talking to you today, and this is our chance to make history again, because the whole country is watching, and this is our chance to say, Seattle's amazing. Seattle's where progress happens, and to send a message that says this isn't happening on Seattle's watch. I want to give just my thanks to all of you for being here and considering this issue. Especially Councilwoman Sawant, when my members brought this issue and said, hey, you know, we're electricians, but this is an issue we want to break our pick on. You were there for that. And I just want to close by saying I love my Filson fashions. I love my Seattle-made Filson fashions. And how can we seriously ask Seattle businesses to compete with child labor in the most brutal labor markets in the world?
My name is Robbie Stern, and I'm president of Puget Sound Advocates for Retirement Action. And first, I want to thank you for considering this resolution. Before I make my comments, I just want to say that Pizzara also supports the proposal that's coming that the folks from Real Change and other homeless advocates are here to support. We stand firmly with them. When I was here for the hearing before the committee, just listening to the testimony, I listened very carefully to the young man who spoke from the Washington Council on International Trade, and I heard him say that this agreement and Fast Track will be good for labor and the environment. And when he sat down, I was right behind him, and so I just very gently reached up and asked him in a whisper, do you really honestly think that we don't know what is good for ourselves? And he turned back to me and he went, shh. And that was, for me, what was symbolic about Fast Track. Because Fast Track is really trying to shh the debate so that the American people can fully understand what's in that agreement and what it means. From the perspective of seniors, we are very concerned about what will happen to the prices of prescription drugs as a result of this trade agreement. In fact, this is not a trade agreement. This is an agreement that puts the multinational corporations in charge of very significant parts of our economy. And before we do that, we ought to have an open debate over a period of time so we know what is going on and so we can hold our Congress accountable for what they're voting for. You are making the right step today if you vote to support this resolution, and we would appreciate your support. Thank you.
Thank you, Robbie.
Hi, the Raging Grannies are here. They're going to sing a brief song, and then I'll give some testimony. In a back room there in D.C., they are cooking dreaming up a deal. They say trade deal, we say no deal. Show us what the draft conceals. Trans-Pacific, Trans-Pacific, Trans-Pacific partnership. Not a trade deal, but a boom deal. We must stand up and resist. Overturns all of our good laws, food and safety and the rest. Privacy laws take a hit too. With no laws, it's quite a mess. Trans-Pacific, Trans-Pacific, Trans-Pacific partnership. Not a trade deal, but a bum deal. We must stand up and resist. Hello, my name is Cynthia Lynette. I'm a member of the Raging Grannies, and I'm an attorney. I'm opposed to the president using his fast-track power to speed a treaty along that he knows, if it were thoroughly understood by those most affected by it, would be completely denounced by the general public. Fast-track prevents Congress from debating the treaty or agreeing to only parts of it. It becomes an up or down vote. The fact that it is such a devastating giveaway to global capitalism, written in secret over a 5-year period and affecting 70% of the world's GDP, and that the president wants to sneak it through our mostly corrupted Congress, only shows just how damaging this treaty is. The treaty would provide for unaccountable supranational courts where multinational corporations could sue states if they thought that a particular law, such as health or labor, would undermine their expected future profits. Expected, it's not even current. How in the world can we allow such a thing? This treaty makes a mockery of the rule of law. If corporations can sue countries in secret tribunals run by the very corporations that are suing, and without the input of those affected, then it's game over for a country's sovereignty. Furthermore, the treaty would extend the duration of patents, thereby giving big pharma a windfall, and ultimately would increase our costs for those medicines. And of course, with such a giveaway, businesses would move quickly their manufacturing plants to such places, thereby killing millions of American jobs and making slaves of their new employees. I am adamantly opposed to the TPP, and I am also opposed to fast track in general, as well as fast track of this treaty.
Thanks, Cynthia. Thank you. Valerie Mandel and Karen Svuffers, I believe.
Hi, I'm Val Mandel. I also work with 350 Seattle. The grannies are a hard act to follow. But the reason that I'm standing before you today is I'm really concerned about a healthy future for all of our children, including that young man over there who happens to belong with me. But to do that, we need to curb global warming with a massive expansion of clean energy. Building a green economy also leads to good jobs. But investor state privileges like those in the TPP mean clean energy programs are being challenged under trade rules. Here's an example. The Ontario Clean Energy Program of 2009 had two worthy goals. They wanted to get the province off coal by 2014, and they wanted to bring back some of the 300,000 jobs that the province had lost since NAFTA. Renewable energy providers were given long-term contracts and encouraged to sell power back to the grid, provided that they used a minimum of 40 to 60% local materials and local workforce. The program created 31,000 jobs, and happily, the province only had one functioning coal-fired power plant by 2014. But the EU and Japan challenged the local sourcing provisions in WTO trade court, and they won. Ontario was forced to remove the provisions, and workers again lost their jobs. ISDS rules mean large foreign corporations can challenge innovative ideas that bolster local economies. Even firms from non-TPP nations, say China, can use investor state if they own a company in a TPP country like Vietnam. Under the TPP, Seattle and Washington are very much at expanded risk for investor state challenges that impact our ability to protect our local economy, our most vulnerable citizens like the homeless, and our children's future. We have over 900 corporations in the state of Washington that are owned by countries who are going to be part of either the TPP or the TTIP.
Thank you.
Okay. Please be courageous.
Karen?
Fast track. Thank you.
Good afternoon, council members. My name is Karen Studders, and I'm here to urge you as city council members to pass two things concerning the ordinance governing homeless encampments. One, help up to 300 of the approximately 2,800 people experiencing homelessness in our city survive and approve the organized encampment ordinance permitting encampments on public land currently zoned commercial, industrial, and educational. And two, to deter institutional racism and discrimination and further advance Seattle's racial and social justice initiative by first passing the all-zone amendment to direct that city staff perform an environmental study on the impact of possibly permitting the siting of encampments in residential areas of Seattle at a future date. There are 4 reasons for this. 1, community leaders support the amendment and the expanded encampment ordinance. 2, homelessness in Seattle is on the increase and disproportionately affects people of color. 3, homeless encampments do operate safely and have caused few problems. And 4, it is not fair to expect faith communities to carry out the responsibilities of our government. In a city document dated January 16th, 2015, it states, while this may be a perception, information from Human Services Department, the police, the fire departments indicate that encampments have generally operated safely and have caused few problems to surrounding neighbors. That is a City of Seattle document written to the mayor and to you as council members. I ask you to support expanding the allowable locations of homeless encampments to include allowing residents of homeless encampments to live in permitted residential areas along with other Seattle residents.
Thank you.
My name is John Otto Lillian-Stopey. I testify today on behalf of the Church Council of Greater Seattle, a coalition of Protestant churches throughout the city and King County. Many of our member congregations who have used their property to allow encampments on their property sites and initiating programs of encampment have encountered opposition from the neighbors. But in almost every case, that opposition has melted away once people have learned the nature of encampments, the types of people that are living there, and in fact, these people are like themselves and their neighbors. Members of our congregations and also many of our neighbors, through contact with the people living in the neighborhood encampments, have realized that what fears they had were unjustified, and to a large extent, their new neighbors were people like themselves who, for one reason or another, did not have the time, for the time being, the means of paying for regular housing in our community. Through contact with our new neighbors, people came to better understand the economic factors underlying Seattle's homelessness problem. In a good number of cases, these people made, the encampers and the neighbors made mutually beneficial friendships with the encampment people. The Church Council of Greater Seattle therefore urges you, the council members, to pass the amendment that would allow for examination of city-owned residential sites for those sites that would be suitable for encampments. We do so because we are convinced that the placement of encampments in suitable residential areas would serve the best interests of those living in such encampments, as well as the interests of those living in the areas of such encampments. I thank you.
Thank you. Eric Shenfield, Alex Parle, and Tracy Day.
Good afternoon, council members. My name is Hillary Coleman, and I am here on behalf of Allison Eisinger from the Seattle-King County Coalition on Homelessness. She's out of town, but wanted to share these comments. She says, "Thank you for taking up Mayor Murray's version of Councilmember Licata's original proposal to create more opportunities for organized tent camps in Seattle. The coalition strongly supports the passage of this proposed legislation. We also support the amendments that would address the fact that homelessness is not confined to specific neighborhoods, cities, or communities, and the solutions to homelessness, both interim and permanent, must not be restricted geographically either. People who are without basic shelter in other communities are currently living in all kinds of neighborhoods. When 1,100 volunteers counted the 3,772 people outside during this year's one-night count, they counted people in Queen Anne, Ballard, Sodo, Lake City, Georgetown, and Ravenna. They also counted people in Renton, Kent, Kirkland, Kenmore, Vashon, Bellevue, Redmond, and Des Moines. In considering making additional city-owned property available for organized tent camps, the council should not seek to limit neighborhoods. Our city policy should reflect our values. People who are homeless should be living in residential neighborhoods. That's the point, isn't it? To include and recognize people rather than literally marginalizing them and making their lives more difficult." Excluding residential neighborhoods in Seattle from consideration is an awkward and arbitrary attempt to do something that is not supported by the evidence of more than 10 years and the personal experience of thousands of people, both housed and homeless. And consider this. Doing so sets a bad precedent in a region where Seattle electeds say they want to see more, not more restrictive, demonstration of willingness to respond constructively to homelessness across the region. What will you say to elected officials in Issaquah or Snoqualmie, Burien or Shoreline, who agree to host tent cities or site shelters or services in theory, but say that they just cannot justify suitable property that is not in a residential neighborhood? Finally, we applaud the significant steps in the right direction as we urge council and the mayor to make good on the mayor's commitment following the Unsheltered Task Force to add 150 year-round shelter beds, providing indoor safety and stability. And as we all turn our attention to the renewal of the Seattle Housing Levy, let's remember that our city's responsibility to funding housing for people who are homeless robustly. Thank you.
Thank you.
I believe that our Washington State congressional delegation is afraid to vote against TPP for fear of being branded as anti-trade in the next election, even though only 5 of 29 chapters concern trade. Letters from my delegation maintain the pretense that it is a trade bill and then go on to say how they can't afford to jeopardize our trade. Maintaining pretense reminds me of the story of the Emperor's New Clothes, where the emperor is conned into wearing imaginary fabric that was invisible to anyone who was unfit for their position or hopelessly stupid. But a child unknowingly broke the pretense by shouting that the emperor had no clothes, and then he was laughed off the stage. Similarly, it is laughable to maintain the pretense that TPP is a trade bill. The happily ever after solution to this tale is to delete the 24 non-trade chapters, which can't be done if TPP is fast-tracked. Then both the people concerned with sovereignty and democracy and people concerned with trade will be happy. You can give our congressional delegation political cover to vote against fast track. I implore you to deliberately shatter the pretense that TPP, as written, is a trade bill by voting against fast track, and then call on our delegation to vote no on fast track so they can then remove the 24 non-trade chapters. Let the laughing start in Seattle and spread across our country that TPP, as written, is not a trade bill and needs serious revision.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Eric Schinfeld with the Washington Council on International Trade, and obviously I'm here to urge you to oppose this resolution today. And I know I'm not the most popular person in the room. You know, I guess the thing is I'm having trouble understanding why you would take this vote today. And it's not because 40% of all the jobs in Washington are tied to international trade. I know you know that. I know you know that the business community feels like this is not the right vote to take. But it's really that you're taking a position to oppose a piece of legislation you haven't read. And the irony is that's exactly right, actually. The irony is that if you just wait 2 or 3 weeks, the Trade Promotion Authority legislation will be introduced. You'll have a chance to read it and see it. And I honestly do believe that you'll be surprised how many of the issues that you care very much about, increasing our labor standards, increasing our environmental standards, protecting our right to legislate in the public interest, are actually in that Trade Promotion Authority legislation. And I actually think that you would probably like it if you had a chance to read it. Now, excuse me, Eric, just a minute. So, excuse me, folks.
Yeah. We allow
fine.
everyone to share their opinion here and to be respected as they share their opinion. So please, let's grant that to this citizen as well.
Great, thank you very much. You know, and again, you know, I am certainly not saying not to take this vote. I'm saying, why would you possibly not wait for just a few weeks to actually read the legislation before you take a position on it? I do want to say, though, that I find this topic of this is not a trade bill when you talk about the Trans-Pacific Partnership to really be fundamentally different than our true understanding of what trade is in the 21st century economy. We talk about intellectual property protection, for example. We know intellectual property protection is so important not only for our IT companies, but our manufacturing companies, our retail companies. That is trade. Trade is our global economy.
Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Alex.
Hello, my name is Alex Parle. I'm the Executive Vice President of the National Center for APEC, a national trade promotion organization based in Seattle. And I'm here today to urge you to vote against the resolution opposing TPA and TPP. Businesses and employees across the United States and in Washington State and here in the city of Seattle need the TPP to be competitive in the Asia Pacific. Trade agreements increase trade. In 2014, 47% of U.S. goods exports went to our 20 FTA partner countries, even though those countries only account for 10% of global GDP. Further, U.S. merchandise exports to these countries totaled $765 billion, up 4% from 2013. According to the Asian Development Bank, there are currently 144 trade agreements signed among countries in Asia, and another 134 proposed or being negotiated. The U.S. is party to only 3 of these signed agreements in the region. We're behind, and we need to be in these markets so that we can be more competitive. Adoption of this resolution is this. Yes, sorry. I did want to note too the the jobs that are created. I've got extra time that are related to exports. Generally pay 18% higher than jobs that aren't related to exports. The adoption of this resolution is a step towards diminishing our state's competitiveness and limiting our ability to create high-paying trade jobs through trade with other nations. Thank you very much.
Thank you. There's 5 more speakers that we have signed up, and then we'll stop public comment. Tracy Day, Chancey Moylan, and William Price.
Hello, good afternoon, members of the City Council. My name is Chauncey Moylan. I'm a resident of a shared shelter, not in the encampment, but I have been a member of the encampment before. I'm here to ask you to support this because 16 dead outside just this year, and every year it's increasing and increasing. Safety is in numbers. The amount of people that you have stuck together in one thing, it's safe. It's safer than staying out in a doorway and by yourself and running solo without the encampments or without these shelters. I mean, a lot more lives are at stake. And you see the women in black that stand for us out there on the streets, and it's serious. People are dying out there on the streets. We need to band together. We need your vote. We need your support. Thank you.
Thank you, Chancey. William Price. Be followed by Joe Ritzmar and Irene Plenifish.
Good afternoon, members of the City Council. My name is William Price, and at first, since no one else did it, I'd like to dedicate this full council meeting to the 16 men and women who have died outside this year. The reason we so strongly support, I'm with Cher, the reason we so strongly support Council Bill 118310 and the redlining study amendment is because literally thousands of people in Seattle will benefit from more encampments. We thank Mayor Murray for leading this effort, Councilperson O'Brien for introducing this bill, Councilwoman Sawant for important amendments, and we all voted for it. There's three things that I want to touch on. First, the important things are, first thing is encampments create safe communities within our communities. Second, they're cost effective. And third, people continue to die outside. As I mentioned, 16 men and women have died outside since the first of the year. Ladies and gentlemen, if we do nothing by not passing this bill, we invite shame not only on our city, but our state and our county and our country. If we act boldly in its passage, we recognize reality. In conclusion, please vote for this bill and this important ordinance. Please vote for the amendment to look at the issue of redlining. We also ask you to help reduce the number of people dying unnecessarily outside. And finally, the words paraphrased from the late great President John F. Kennedy, I ask you to not only look at how this will affect mankind, but ask you to how it affect our community as a whole. In other words, ask not what you can do for the good of this city, but ask what you can do for the good of mankind as a whole. Thank you very much.
Are you Joe?
Good afternoon to the council. I'm Joseph Ritzman. I work for SSA Marine, which is a Seattle-based port operator here in the city. And I'm here essentially to represent the trade community today, which, as you know, broadly consists of agricultural exporters in the eastern part of our state, truckers in our community that live on taking loads in and out of the port, as well as folks that work on the rail, and also importers that are involved in the Kent Valley and processing goods. These, as I think you probably know, are very good jobs. They provide family wage, living jobs, and a recent study that I think the city helped commission showed that the average wage of these jobs is about $70,000, which is significantly above the median in our state, which I think is about $52,000. So I would echo the sentiments from the gentleman from APEC, which is a solid think tank, that trade essentially is something that we should not be afraid of, but essentially is something that promotes prosperity and growth for all. I would also echo the sentiments from Wichita, Washington Council on International Trade. Let's wait a couple of weeks. Let's really see what's in there before we take this vote. I would just finally point out the timing of this, I think, sends the wrong message to the trade community. As we look out at our harbor, we know Terminal 5 is idle, and we need to find a new tenant for it to handle cargo. We know that the ports of Seattle and Tacoma are thinking very deeply about how to collaborate in an intensely competitive global landscape. That is, as we lose cargo to Vancouver, Canada, to Southern California, as the Panama Canal undergoes a significant expansion, ships might not have to call here. I think it sends the wrong message to the trade community, and I would urge you to have further consideration before you pass 31573. Thank you.
Thanks, Joe. Our last speaker will be Irene Plenifish.
Good afternoon. My name is Irene Plenifish, Government Affairs Director for Microsoft. Microsoft supports passage of Trade Promotion Authority and completion of a strong Trans-Pacific Partnership Agreement because of the opportunity to expand trade relations with key Asia-Pacific nations. For the tech sector, the TPP should strengthen protections for intellectual property, providing more deterrence to piracy, to stronger adherence to international rules in areas such as patents and copyright. TPP should provide new market opportunities for digitally enabled services, and for the first time, cross-border data flows will be addressed directly, a subject which is critical for many industries, including but well beyond the tech sector. Some have expressed concerns about the potential inclusion of ISDS as an arbitration procedure. It is absolutely true that the U.S. has been a party to multiple cases using ISDS and has never lost one. Thus far in the TPP negotiations, there has been extensive engagement with the Congress and a standing offer for every member of Congress to review negotiating texts. Working groups are in place for environmental and labor stakeholders to give input into the negotiations. Trade Promotion Authority is necessary so that Congress can define its requirements for the final trade agreement. Importantly, other nations will not put forward their best offer in the absence of Trade Promotion Authority. Finally, the bill providing Trade Promotion Authority has not yet been introduced, so this is premature at best. So we respectfully request that you vote against any resolution on this subject and withhold judgment on these matters until there is a bill on TPA on which to comment. Thank you.
Thank you. That completes our public comment period. Payment of bills. Please read the title.
Council Bill 118358, appropriating money to pay salary claims and ordering the payment thereof.
I move to pass Council Bill 118358. Second. It's moved and seconded. Is there any discussion?
No.
Please call the roll on the passage of the bill.
Godin.
Aye.
Harrell.
Aye.
Licata.
Aye.
O'Brien.
Aye.
Rasmussen.
Aye.
Sawant.
Aye.
Bagshaw. Clark.
Aye.
President Burgess.
Aye.
9 in favor, none opposed.
The bill passes and the chair will sign it. The report to the full council.
The report of the full council. Agenda item number 1. Council Bill 118330, relating to the City Light Department, amending Ordinance 123256 to clarify the role of and support for the City Light Review Panel. The committee recommends the bill pass. The bill was held in full council on March 16th, 2015.
That's the first time anyone has cheered the passage of the payroll bill. Thank you. Thank you. Or excuse me, Councilmember Sawant.
I'm not sure. I think it's working. This ordinance is designed by Central Staff, Council Central Staff, to clarify the role of the City Light Review Panel. It does that in 2 ways. First, it puts into practice the budget change that the council made in the last budget cycle to give Finance General control over the budget of the review panel rather than City Light. The other change is in the scope of the work of the review panel to attempt to reflect the reality that the review panel has taken on a broader scope of work in recent years than they were originally designed for. And the Energy Committee recommends we pass this ordinance, although Councilmember Harrell has distributed an amended version to clarify things, and I support that.
Thank you. Councilmember Harrell.
Thank you very much. Yeah, when we pass this, I like an applause too, just to warm me up a little bit. I want to thank Councilmember Sawant for working with me on this legislation that you are championing. I will formally move to amend Section 1 of Council Bill 118330 to add a new subsection H to Section 4 of the Ordinance 123256 as follows. I'm sorry, of Ordinance 118330 as follows. H, the council continues to expect the panel to provide the mayor and the council with analysis and recommendations on significant elements of the strategic plan, including but not limited to financial policies, cost allocation, rate design, operational efficiency, and to submit its recommendations to the mayor and the council, or if a collective recommendation cannot be reached, a recommendation indicating the majority and minority positions and the rationales for those positions. And so that's it. And basically what we're trying to do is make sure that we form this panel, if you will, to protect the lowest income folks in this city, to protect the employers, to look at all of the information that we get, to be able to make sure the utility provides all of the cost detail to protect our consumers, to protect people who are underrepresented to the city. And we don't want them to punt on the big issues. We don't want them to punt on any of the financial policies, rate design, any of those things that make up the bread and butter of the utility, if you will, and this will protect all of our residents and even those who do not have a voice. So this clarifies that language, and again, I want to thank Councilmember Sawant. We want to make sure that even if they can't come up with a firm recommendation, then they do the tough work and identify where they disagree and submit it to us for our recommendation. So that's what this language does, and I ask for your support.
Thank you. Is there a second to the amendment?
Second.
It's moved and seconded that Councilmember Harrell's amendment be adopted. Any questions or comment? All in favor of the amendment indicate by voting aye.
Aye.
Opposed, vote no. The amendment is unanimously adopted. The legislation before us now, is there... Totally lost it here today. Any other questions or comments on the legislation? Please call the roll on the passage of the bill.
Godin.
Aye.
Harrell.
Aye.
Licata.
Aye.
O'Brien.
Aye.
Rasmussen.
Aye.
Sawant.
Aye.
Bagshaw.
Aye.
Clark.
Aye.
President Burgess.
Aye.
9 in favor, none opposed.
The amended legislation passes, and the chair will sign it. The report of the Planning, Land Use, and Sustainability Committee. Please read item 2.
The report of the Planning, Land Use, and Sustainability Committee, agenda item number 2, Resolution 31573, expressing the Seattle City Council's opposition to Trade Promotion Authority and strong concerns about draft elements of the proposed Trans-Pacific Partnership. The committee recommends the resolution be adopted as amended with the divided report, with Councilmembers O'Brien, Licata, and Sawant in favor and Councilmember Burgess opposed.
Thank you. Councilmember O'Brien.
Thank you, Council President Burgess. So we heard a lot today in testimony. I'd like to start, Council President Burgess, by moving to substitute version 3 for version 2 of this resolution. And I'll just say that in the time since this came out of committee, there's been ongoing conversation about further refinements of language, which I will speak to in a moment, and adding a fourth section. But I'd like to put version 3 before us to speak to that.
I'll second the motion. Any questions or comments about the substitution? So why don't we vote on that, and then we'll go to the bill. So the motion in front of us is to substitute version 3 for version 2. All in favor indicate by voting aye.
Aye.
Opposed, vote no. That passes unanimously, and version 3 is in front of us. And I will say, Councilmember O'Brien, it's been great working with you the last few days, as well as representatives of labor and the environmental groups that weighed in. Thank you.
Outstanding. So we now have a version before us, and I want to take a minute just to speak to what this does and why I think this is so important for the City of Seattle to take this motion. First of all, there are 4 sections in this resolution. The first clearly states the City Council opposes fast-track authority. The second section lists out the City Council's strong support for fair trade practices and agreements that protect things like American jobs, workers, environment, enforceable labor and environmental standards. The third section says that the City Council urges the President and the U.S. Trade Representative to negotiate a Trans-Pacific Partnership Agreement that meets these above principles. And finally, Section 4 states that if these principles are not adequately addressed in the final TPP agreement, the Council will urge our congressional delegation to vote to reject this trade agreement. So that is the high-level outline of the resolution that's before us. And I'm just going to take a minute to highlight 2 really important reasons why I'm supporting this resolution, stating our opposition to fast-track authority and raising concerns about the Trans-Pacific Partnership. It's been highlighted, very difficult to address something that doesn't actually exist in any form that we can meaningfully debate. But that actually further highlights the problem with the lack of transparency through this process. I remain committed to trade as being a powerful tool, but fair trade is critically important. It's been highlighted that the state of Washington is the most trade-dependent state in the nation, and as in the city of Seattle, we benefit significantly from strong trade agreements. I think it's important to note that when you're doing so well with trade, that makes it even more important that you fully understand the ramifications of any trade agreement before we move forward. And this is a game that we're doing well at. If we're going to change the rules, let's make sure we know exactly what those rules are before we take that step forward. It's also important to recognize that trade agreements can be negotiated in multiple different ways. There's no requirement that they lack complete transparency. And we can find better ways, as we have throughout the history of this country, to find ways to negotiate trade agreements where we all have input and we all understand what's being negotiated, and Congress has ability to negotiate and debate true agreements. The other area I want to highlight that cause great concerns are issues around labor and environmental laws. You know, the city of Seattle is taking the national lead on both strong labor and strong environmental laws. And it's critically important, not just for the citizens of Seattle, but people around the planet, that we have trade policies that support strong environmental and labor laws. There have been a lot of concerns raised in documents that have been leaked, but it's hard to tell what is exactly going on with this agreement because of the lack of transparency. But the one thing I will say has been very clear. Every single labor and environmental leader, locally and nationally, that I've talked to or heard from is unanimous that they're opposed fast track and they have very strong concerns about the Trans-Pacific Partnership. For those two reasons and many others, I'm proud to support this resolution.
Thank you. Thank you. Councilmember Sawant.
Thank you, President Burgess, and thank you also to the comments by Councilmember O'Brien. First of all, I want to say that I'm thrilled to see a lot of my sisters and brothers from the labor movement, from the environmental community, and from among housing advocates and advocates for the homeless. And I'm also thrilled that the public comment combined both of these important issues, and people spoke to both. That shows that these are not isolated issues we are talking about. I am excited to be able to cast a vote in opposition to the TPP today. It is just over a year since my office first drafted an anti-TPP resolution, and I especially thank the members of IBEW 46 of the building trades for initiating that work with us. We're voting to show our opposition today entirely because of the movement of environmental activists, labor unions, and social justice organizations that have brought to light what big business always intended to be a secret trade treaty. Described as NAFTA on steroids, the TPP gives more strength to multinational corporations to sue countries for lost corporate profits due to worker rights or environmental regulations. And the representatives from big business today said, you haven't seen TPP. Okay, but we've seen what NAFTA has done, and we don't need any more evidence. Like NAFTA, the international tribunals that rule on these lawsuits are not the courts of any country and are not subject to any democratic accountability. Given that representatives of 600 multinational corporations have been invited to help draft the details of the TPP, and you and I are not even shown what it says, except what was leaked on WikiLeaks last year, it is no surprise that this sort of court systematically sides with the multinational corporations. Corporations have already collected $365 million by suing governments, usually in less developed countries, under existing treaties. It's not just NAFTA. But under NAFTA, the Central American and Peruvian free trade agreements, $13 billion is pending in lawsuits by corporations. I would like to give a few examples. In 2012, the French firm Veolia sued the Egyptian government to overturn a minimum wage increase. Under NAFTA, Ethel Corporation sued Canada because Canadians had voted to ban a harmful gasoline additive MMT. The corporation won $13 million in fines from the Canadian taxpayers and are now able to sell gas with MMT. Quebec's ban on pesticides containing 2,4-D, a dangerous element, was challenged by Dow AgroSciences under NAFTA and led to a $2 million settlement from Dow from Quebec taxpayers. These examples are not anomalies. They are the purpose of free trade agreements like the TPP. I would also like to take up for a moment a recent editorial by the Seattle Times that argued that the TPP is not something the Seattle City Council should concern ourselves with. Let's be clear, if passed, the TPP will have a serious impact on Seattle. One example, what would have happened if the legal challenge to our new minimum wage was decided by the TPP's International Tribunal of Multinational Corporations? Another example is Boeing. We have seen Boeing attempt to cut wages by moving jobs out of Washington into South Carolina. But now the workers of Boeing in South Carolina are fighting to unionize. Just like NAFTA led to over 1 million good jobs being transferred to the sweatshops in the maquiladoras in Mexico, the TPP is designed to let corporations like Boeing threaten to move jobs out of states like South Carolina to strong-arm workers out of unionizing. And as my brother Monty Anderson from the building trade said, we have to hold a high bar for workers' rights in Seattle. And the only way we can do that is if we also protect the rights of all workers. That is the only way we can do that. A lobbyist from SSA Marine spoke here today. Let's remember, SSA Marine is the private cargo handling corporation that is behind the Cherry Point coal terminal that the entire community of Bellingham, including the Lummi Nation, is opposed to. And as far as Microsoft goes, if you support the workers in Microsoft, be against TPP. I also wanted to say, it is problematic that the Congress does not get to read the language in the TPP, but I'll also be honest, I do not trust Congress either. A majority of the people in the United States do not, and that is all the more important why political leadership needs to be shown at every level, including city level. While the Seattle City Council's resolution has no legal weight to directly stop the TPP, it is a valuable tool for all the activists building a movement against the TPP. They can use the support of our resolution to help organize to stop Obama and the Republicans in Congress from fast-tracking this through. Labor unions are against the TPP, environmental groups are against the TPP, social justice organizations are against the TPP. Basically, anyone who supports the rights of human beings and the environment is on one side of the debate. And on the other side are corporations like Boeing, Microsoft, SSA Marine, BNSF Railroad, Starbucks, JP Morgan Chase, and Wells Fargo. Well, we know which side we're on.
Councilmember Licata.
Well, I want to begin by thanking Councilor Sawant and Councilor O'Brien and the rest of the council members who've been engaged in this effort. But most of the thanks obviously goes to the citizens and residents of Seattle who are here today. Without your presence and continual pressure and education and mobilization and organization, the council would not have this legislation before us today. And in fact, I believe that the nation is looking at Seattle's vote today. Only one other city has taken a position on this that I know of. The other major city was Los Angeles, another port city. We are a port city. This will send a very powerful message to Washington, D.C. Underlying this discussion, I'm not going to go through the statistics because, and the examples, which were excellently demonstrated both by our speakers today and by Councilmember Sawant and Councilmember O'Brien. Just a couple words, I want to frame what I see as happening here. It's the same struggle we had before with the multi-international agreement. Some of you remember the council actually took a position at that time, also opposed to that approach because it was doing the same thing that this would do, which is circumvent the ability of citizens to control their own environment through a democratic process, through a democratic court process, rather than having courts under a sidebar, more corporate-dominated situation to protect our environmental laws and to protect our workers. We will continue to see this sort of struggle going on in the future, and the only thing that is going to really derail it is the mobilization of citizens in a democracy. I believe that Our democracy is the bulwark that can and must stand up to the trend that we are seeing in this nation, where we see, and across the world, more and more power being devolved to corporate identities. You have to consider that the basis of democracy is transparency. The basis of trade is the opposite of transparency. It's to remain basically keeping your secrets and trading to the advantage of the shareholders or the owners of the corporation. A democracy is to have an open process so that everyone has equal access to information, has equal access to influencing how their lives are going to be ruled. I believe that today, if we pass this legislation, we all need to let everyone we know throughout the country that Seattle can do it, they can do it. We need to send a message. Thank you.
Councilmember Bagshaw. Councilmember Bagshaw.
Oh, thank you. We love Nick, too. I want to address this first by saying thanks to all of you for coming. But I want to say to Microsoft and to Macmillan Piper and others that called me and said, take a look at this. I want you to know that I went back and looked at Obama's website, the White House website. And here were the principles that they articulate as being why they are negotiating the TPP the way they are. Unlocking opportunities for Americans through trade. Support made in America exports. Enforce fundamental labor rights. TPP will promote strong environmental protections. Help American small businesses. Support jobs for Washington workers. In no small part, because I had heard from Microsoft and others, I really dug into this. And I have to tell you that looking at the White House website made me very concerned that what I saw were a lot of conclusionary statements without a lot of support. And frankly, this disappoints me a great deal because I got into running for this job and city council in 2008 and 2009 because I was really impressed with what President Obama was doing. But I believe at this point that they need to show us that if we're really believing our principles, that we support fair trade practices in the city, that we are reliant on trade, we are going to protect American jobs, and we're going to protect workers not just here in the state of Washington, but globally. We need to know a whole lot more about this. I'm going to be supporting this resolution. I want to say thank you to my colleagues for getting it started.
Councilmember O'Brien.
Thank you. To wrap up, I just want to also say thank you to all the advocates on both sides, but particularly the environmental labor community leaders who have done an amazing job over the last month to really educate and inform us. I want to thank my colleagues. Everyone here has had a chance to really engage in it. We've continued to revise the language all the way up till today to get a document that I feel really proud of. That's a very strong document that represents the values of Seattle. And while I'm chair of the committee this came through, I need to acknowledge Councilmember Sawant, who has been working on this for over a year. So thank you all.
Thank you. Councilmember Harrell.
That's okay. You gave me that look, but
Yeah, you're on.
Okay. Give me that Council Burgess look. I know when he wants to get through stuff, my friend. I'll speak very quickly. The biggest challenge I had with, first of all, I'm supporting legislation. That is not the issue. The issue for me was, if there's one thing I've learned in life is that reasonable minds perhaps can differ. And when I hear that we will have improved labor standards and I hear that we will have increased environmental protection, it disturbs me that I'm getting most of my information hearsay from what's been negotiated, that the process is very questionable, and so it's hard for me to believe that I will get these kinds of protections. that while I strongly applaud the environmental movement for voicing their concerns, the voice of labor to me resonates extremely loud, because when we look at globalization, I think for this city and for this country, it's going to be critically important to fall on the right side of globalization, and that will be on the side of our workers. That if you look at from the history of our country, when in 1900 we only had 7% of our labor organized, when you look at the history of our country and you see the demise of organized labor, you also see the demise of our middle class. And so while I understand that in the dispute settlement procedure, as an example, that the United States has not lost, it worries me that our courts here can be circumvented and an international group of panelists can basically make the decisions that affect our workers. And so the decision became very clear to me. As much as I want to keep jobs and innovation and want to keep our employers having employees, I just think that as the debate continues in this country and we look and talk about globalization, we have to default on the side of our workers. And that's why I proudly support this resolution. And I'm sorry, Council President Burgess, my timing was a little off. I was just gaining my thoughts.
Yeah. No problem. We'll move now to our vote on Resolution 31573, Version 3, which we substituted earlier. All in favor of the resolution, vote aye.
Aye.
Opposed, vote no. The resolution is unanimously adopted. Thank you very much. We're moving now to item 3 on the agenda. Please read Council Bill 118310.
Agenda item number 3, Council Bill 118310, relating to land use and zoning amending sections 23.42.054, 23.54.015, 23.76.004.006.032, and 23.84A.038 of the Seattle Municipal Code, and adding new section 23.42.056 to permit transitional encampments for homeless individuals as an interim use on city-owned or private property. The committee recommends the bill pass as amended.
Thank you. Councilmember O'Brien.
Thank you, Council President Burgess. We have a few amendments on this, so my hope was to walk through the base legislation as it came out of committee. I have a small amendment to propose to clarify something that we did in committee, and then we'll tee up amendments about future study and SEPA analysis. So this legislation would create a new permit type for encampments on city-owned, privately owned, or major educational institution-owned property in the city of Seattle. I want to be clear that the current encampments that exist in Seattle under other permits and under other rules, none of that would be affected by the legislation that we're talking about today. These new encampments would require community outreach, including creation of a community advisory committee. They would be subject to certain operational standards that will be developed by Department of Human Services. They could take place on industrial, commercial, downtown, neighborhood commercial, and Seattle mixed zones. The reason of this restriction is in part because of legislation that was, environmental analysis was done on a couple years ago, had studied this land. And so the legislation before us, without going through further environmental review, cannot go beyond the scope of that. That we will address possibly doing further environmental review in a moment. As I mentioned, it could be on city-owned property, private party, or an educational major institution, which specifically addresses University of Washington. The location would need to have solid access to transit and services. The operator of any such encampment would need to come from a pre-qualification list that will be set up, a roster that will be set up by the Human Service Department. I want to be specific on this because we discussed this at committee too, and I just want to highlight it once again, that the intent is the process for pre-qualifying for operators will allow for both traditional service providers, but also self-managed encampments to be pre-qualified on this process. And finally, one thing that one of the amendments we made in committee was to change this from a 1-year permit to allow it to be a permit that could be renewed after 1 year if the conditions were met according to the Human Service Department. And the intended committee was that it could be reviewed 1 time for up to 1 additional year. And so with that, I'd like to move amendment number 1, which just adds some clarifying language to make it explicit that it was a 1-time extension. So I will go ahead and move amendment number 1.
Second.
Okay.
Thank you.
As I mentioned, this simply clarifies by putting in inserting the word 1 time and says, adds a section 4 that says the director may renew a master use permit for a transitional encampment interim use issued according to pursuant to section 23.42.056E for a period not to exceed 1 year, 1 time, for up to 1 year.
Any questions about the amendment? I think this was discussed this morning at briefing. All in favor of adopting proposed amendment number 1, vote aye.
Aye.
Opposed, vote no. The amendment is adopted. Great.
Now, the next amendment, I'm just going to say some prefacing language, and then I'm going to ask Councilmember Sawant to move her amendment, which would ask the Department of Development to create a study to study all lands in the city. There is also an amendment to that amendment that I believe Councilmember Clark will put forward that would narrow that study to multifamily zones. So we'll walk through those both. I just want to, sometimes when we get in the amendments on amendments, it can be unclear what we're actually doing, and I'm trying to make sure that we all are very clear on what step is. So I will defer to Councilmember Sawant to move her amendment.
I move Amendment 2 to Council Bill 118310.
Second.
Thank you. This amendment was debated in committee. It would ask the Department of Planning and Development to do an environmental impact study into the impacts of allowing all zones to be considered in determining the best locations for the encampments that will be awarded in this new type of permit. The amendment also asks the study to look at the impacts of using land that is owned by other government agencies, such as the Department of Transportation of the state or Sound Transit. In the past, encampments have successfully used such properties. Ideally, encampments are in a location that is mutually agreed upon by the homeless residents of the encampments and the other people in the community that they're going into. We heard really fantastic testimony from Seattle Pacific University students last time about having a positive experience hosting Tent City 3 on their campus, and I think we should attempt to forge these mutual agreements. The main argument against my amendment to include all of these other areas, including all residential areas, has been that residential zones are not close to transit. I find this an absurd idea. If residential zones are not close to transit, then we better urgently re-examine Seattle's bus routes. Not every city property obviously will be a good location for an encampment. So what this resolution does is allow us to study them all rather than pre-deciding our presupposition that homeless people are somehow should only be able to allowed here or there. By agreeing to study all zones, the City Council will uphold the principle that we are all residents, whether we have a roof over our heads or not.
Thank you. Proposed amendment number 2 is in front of us. Councilmember Clark, I believe you have an amendment to the amendment.
Yeah, I think we thought we would just put both of these in play at the same time so that we can have a discussion about what the merits of both approaches are. So, first of all, I do want to thank Councilmember O'Brien for shepherding this through committee, and thank Mayor Murray for bringing forward the proposal. And as folks who have been a part of this conversation for a long time know, we've talked about this previously. And I've not been a supporter of this in the past, but certainly the circumstances of where we are as a city, the number of people who have no better option than to be sleeping on our streets has become so much of a greater crisis in our city. The number of people has, as was mentioned in testimony, and as many of us who do the one night count have seen, is just demonstrably different from how it has been in past years. And I think a lot of us thought that the height of the problem would come during the recession. The recession, according to The Economist, is long over. Many people have missed the end, are still waiting for it. And for people who are living on our streets, the recession actually maybe wasn't the biggest problem. It was the fundamental shift in the economy. It was the pullback from a lot of state and federal funding of supports and the cumulative effects of several decades of disinvestment in low-income housing and safety net services from the federal and state governments. That leaves cities struggling to figure out how to respond. And encampments, unfortunately, are a necessity at this point. They are not the answer to homelessness, and we should not be judging them as an answer to homelessness. They are about safety, community, and coordinated access to resources for people who need help. They need the safety, they need the community, they need the way to find that time of safety in order to be able to grasp the next thing that will help them find safe, decent housing someplace. So, I know, but you're not going to clap in a moment. It's like you're making a down payment, but that's good. So several speakers referenced the residential question, and that's what my amendment would change the wording in Councilmember Sawant's proposal to be, rather than all zones, to be the multifamily zones, and I will explain why. So just as a reminder, the bill as it is right now would allow encampments in areas where people live. So I want to be careful that we're not mistaking something. It is not that encampments, even under the base legislation, would not be allowed near places where people live. And some people have been a little loose with the language. Some people have testified, well, it should, people live places, encampments should be near where people live. That certainly happens now under some of the more difficult permits that we have to use, and the easy tracks of for instance, the easier tracks of church-hosted encampments that are also in single-family neighborhoods. So like anything with land use, nothing is black and white with this. There are things under the base legislation that will allow encampments to be near where folks live, and under some of the permits that we have right now, it happens in our city under existing authorities. The question is about the future study. And the future study, a version of a future study is going to pass here. The question is, will it be for all zones, including single family? And I would argue that actually, if we are looking for a logical way to do this, that we would parallel how we permit for shelter. We zone for intensities of use. We zone for what makes sense in terms of uses that are adjacent to each other. And I certainly hear the argument that there is transit throughout the city. I think many people would argue that there are different levels and abilities to access transit throughout different parts of the city. The indoor shelter parallel, under single-family zoning, you can do shelter in a single-family zone, but it's an appealable decision. It's an appealable permit. It's an administrative conditional use permit. In the other multifamily zones, it's allowable outright with the buffer standards and things like that, the development standards that are consistent with the encampment legislation that we're talking about here today. So this amendment originally failed at the committee level. I had questions about, is there something we could do that would parallel how we do zoning for this particular type of intensity of use? The shelter system was the closest one that I thought made sense in terms of how would we hook a new zoning decision to something that we do now that I believe works. So again, this change would be for the review that DPD will carry out and return to council with recommendations later this year to be multifamily rather than all zones. And so single family would be the one that would drop out. And my argument again is about intensity of uses. I think access to transit is a real question for many of the residential neighborhoods, and also access to services and nearby resources.
Thank you. I'll second the amendment. And colleagues, this amendment is on the blue sheet that was at our desk here. Any comments on the amendment Councilmember Sawant.
So while this amendment to the amendment, I hope it's helping to keep track of it, would be a step forward from the current language in the bill, I think it falls short in several ways. First, single-family zones are not the only zones left out in this amendment as compared to my amendment. This version of the amendment also leaves out Washington State Department of Transportation properties and sound transit properties that, as I mentioned, have been used successfully by encampments in the past. It also leaves out downtown mixed residential, or DMR, and international district residential, or IDR, zones as well. Secondly, I would remind council members that we are only talking about an impact study. I think if we're doing a study, let's study all zones. It seems possible to me that there could be locations for an encampment in a single-family zone that could have real community support. I have to say, I've been approached by many residents of single-family zones who have said that they support this amendment. And I fail to see the logic of preempting the possibility of having that by just doing a study. I do think, though, that underlying all of this, all of the technical speak is the fundamental point that I, as a council member, want to reiterate that we are all equal residents of this city, whether we have a home or not. And rather than getting bogged down in the technical language, let's have a study that includes all zones and see what's viable. Let the Department of Planning and Development look at that. And lastly, I would say that if council members are concerned about access to transit and social services, then please join with me in advocating for full funding for mass transit by taxing the wealthy and full funding of social services.
Councilmember Licata.
Well, I appreciate Councilmember Clark's interest in improving the current legislation, but I will be supporting the amendment by Councilmember Sawant without the additional amendment. And the reason for that is that, when you think about it, the first self-managed encampment in Seattle that Cher started was at the bottom of Queen Anne. Actually, it's on the current ground that the Gates Foundation is now located. And that organization, Share, which has managed, basically has worked with residents to self-manage the encampments over a long period of time, has had a very good record of working with residents and residents recognizing the ability to people to self-manage. So in that particular instance, what happened was that the community council that existed in Lower Queen Anne at that time had been working with the residents, and they actually went on record that they should not leave that location, which was recommended by, at that time, Mayor Norm Rice, that they leave, and which the local chamber wanted them to leave. They did leave because they were asked to, and they've always left whenever they've been asked to. But it's interesting to note that the community there recognized that having an encampment in an area that was basically next to a residential area was, in fact, not a negative thing, but in fact was the positive thing. It was a way of helping out fellow residents get by in the most dire straits that they were at. So I think that if we were to extrapolate from that past into the future, we'd recognize that I believe that many residents in Seattle recognize that we all have to look out for our fellow human beings in trying to give them a roof over their head and an opportunity to have a decent life.
Thank you. On the amendment on the blue sheet, restricting the study to multifamily zones. All in favor of this amendment, vote aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, vote no. No. The amendment is defeated. Now the amendment, proposed amendment number 2 is before us. All those in favor of the amendment, vote aye. Aye. Opposed, vote no.
No.
No. The amendment is passed. Will the clerk please call the roll on the amended council bill?
Godin.
Sorry.
Godin.
Aye.
Harrell.
President Burgess,
Excuse me.
I thought it was time for final
I'm sorry,
comments.
did you want to say something more? Okay.
Down here.
Sorry. I wanted to take this opportunity to thank everyone who fought for this ordinance, the activists in Nicholsville and 10 City 3, the UW Health Equity Circle students, the SPU students, the activists from the Church Council and the faith community, Lehigh, SAFE, Share Wheel, and Real Change, especially wonderful activists like Lisa and Susan and Anitra. This is another example of how when we fight, we can have an impact. Obviously, encampments are not a solution to the housing crisis in Seattle, as many have stated. They are not a solution to homelessness either. But as long as there is homelessness, anything we can do to make people safer, we have an obligation to do. I do think that it is important to take a step back and consider how far the Seattle City Council has come over the past 2 years. It was stated earlier that council members who opposed this 2 years ago are supporting it now because homelessness has gone up. This is true, homelessness has gone up. But I think it's important to remember that for everybody who was homeless 2 years ago, it was a matter of urgency. They did not want to see this happen 2 years later. And so it's important for us to examine how come 2 years ago when Councilmember Licata brought this same bill to the City Council, it failed by a 4-5 vote. Now it is poised to pass unanimously. What has changed is the political mood of this city following a grassroots campaign in the election campaign in 2013 and the fact that the movement of regular people in Seattle has grown to put increasing pressure on the elected officials. And those of you who have packed the council chambers today are an example of this. And you are the reason that the amendment to counter redlining has passed. As a whole, though, this ordinance is a small step towards what Seattle needs to do to address the epidemic of homelessness and unaffordable housing. We need to fight for rent control to rein in skyrocketing rents. We need a Bertha-sized investment in building thousands and thousands of city-owned housing units. We need full investment in human services. We need tenant rights. And finally, we need to shift the balance of power away from the big developers and landlords who are driving more and more people out of their homes. But in the meanwhile, I'm happy to vote yes on this ordinance.
Councilmember Bagshaw.
Thank you. So I want to say thank you, Mike O'Brien, for shepherding this, and also to the mayor, to Hayoke Kim, and to others who worked on this last winter. You know, I'm one of those members of the 4-5 vote. That was part of the 4. Working with encampments with many of you in this room is something I've been doing for the last decade. We are making good strides. I think this is a step in the right direction, as everybody has underscored already. Encampments are not the solution to homelessness, but yet it is one item and one thing we can do on the continuum to make people safe. And that's really something that I want to focus on right now, and that is to improve our living conditions for everyone in the city. I live downtown. I want to make sure that this compassionate step is put into play. But I'm also going to ask our Human Services Department and our Department of Planning and Development to create a toolkit so that we can move quickly. Those who might be interested in sponsoring an encampment can do so without months of delay. I also want to work with those in our human services community, our public defenders, our police, and even our courts to promote these alternatives. But we must acknowledge that camping or sleeping on sidewalks is unsafe, both for those who are sleeping on the sidewalk and those people who are there that live and work around them. Everyone downtown and in our neighborhoods deserves to feel safe and to be safe in all of our neighborhoods. And what this means is that our police, our parks, SDOT, the business community, I want us to be adopting clear policies and procedures so that we can offer ways for people to get into those shelters at night. Meaning, if somebody is on the street at night, that we have a van to offer them to move to one of these encampments, to provide them places to go and ways to get there. I'm poised to work with our business community. We have people who have already volunteered to put money forward so we can have that kind of a van with case managers that will be available for people, so we can say, you may not be able to be here, but we have some good, safe places for you. So I'm eager both to pass this today and then to move forward with the next steps. Thanks all of you for coming.
Councilmember Harrell.
Thank you very much. You know, in our discussion with our homelessness, I think it's critically important to say that the face of the homeless has changed within my adult time. The face has changed. It's now a teacher, a single parent, children. You know, I was very pleased to be called an unsung hero earlier today, because when I vote as I do, quite honestly and candidly with all of you, my friends, I don't really care who gets the credit. You're here. I'll give you some credit. But it shouldn't really be about who gets the credit on these kinds of votes, because even the people who you think may oppose you might be homeowners who pay their taxes, and we take that money and spend over $40 million a year on trying to help our most vulnerable population. So I'm very proud to support our most vulnerable groups, but I will tell you that having grown up in this city, I have many people I grew up with that are homeless. Their face has changed, and I think we have a strong council that understands this, and we are proud to take these kinds of votes. And at the end of the day, we are all in this together. So we know we're trying to battle this thing we call homelessness. We have to go back to our very basic roots: one community, one city. We all matter. And so as we study where encampments should and could be, I think it's in that spirit. Let's look at our entire city. Let's see what we are doing for our most vulnerable. And let's not exclude and box other people out of the conversation. It should be an inclusive conversation. And I look forward to continuing my work with all of you in here, hearing the sound of my voice. Very proud to take my vote today. Thank you very much.
Roll on Council Bill 118310 as amended.
Godin.
Aye.
Harrell.
Aye.
Licata.
Aye.
O'Brien.
Aye.
Rasmussen.
Aye.
Sawant.
Aye.
Bagshaw.
Aye.
Clark.
Aye.
President Burgess.
Aye.
9 in favor, none opposed.
The bill passes, and the chair will sign. Report of the Housing Affordability, Human Services, and Economic Resilience Committee. Please read item number 4.
You want to do a brief?
Yeah. Please take your conversations out into the foyer, please, so we can continue our agenda.
The report of the Housing Human Services. The report of the Housing Affordability, Human Services, and Economic Resiliency, agenda item number 4, Council Bill 118325, relating to unsheltered homelessness, lifting a budget proviso imposed on Finance General's reserve budget control level, changing appropriations to various budget departments and budget control levels and from various funds in the budget, making cash transfers between various cities' funds, and ratifying and confirming certain prior acts. Council Bill 118349, relating to incentivizing regional partners to develop homeless shelters, lifting a budget proviso imposed on Finance General's reserves, budget control level, changing appropriations to various departments and budget control levels, and from various funds in the budget, making cash transfers between various city funds, and amending Ordinance 124648, which adopted the 2015 budget, including 2015 through 2020 Capital Improvement Program. The committee recommends that both bills pass as amended.
So if we can have you take the, yeah. With all the ambient noise, the microphones go down. That's the problem. All right, so we've got two council bills here, both having to do with funding for homeless services. And I mentioned a little bit of this morning, but I'll go through this briefly again. There were two provisos that council passed last fall. The first one, we knew that on a parallel track to our own work that the mayor's task force on unsheltered would be reviewing recommendations and making recommendations to the council and to the mayor for immediate steps that could be taken to try to improve safety and try to accommodate more people in safe shelter. So this first item, we had parked $200,000 to respond to immediate things that could be accomplished from those recommendations from the mayor's task force. The $200,000, they have come back to us with a plan now. Human Services Department, in concert with council staff, has had a chance to put together a proposal here from the recommendations of the task force. And it, as council members know, we budget at kind of a higher level BCL. So the $200,000 goes in as an infusion to Human Services Department. It now has no tags on it. What they have told us and what we have put in the whereases or in the body of the council bill is the recognition of how we've been told it will be spent at this time. That would be $70,000 for additional shelter beds that would be located at the King County Administration Building. That's an expansion. $60,000 for additional shelter beds for youth, and this is a new facility that Peace for the Streets by Kids from the Streets will be operating in that area, kind of between Capitol Hill and the central area. And then $70,000 for case management for homeless persons residing in transitional encampments. This is most likely to be tacked on to an existing contract. We've got several contractors who do particular types of outreach for people who are living in encampments. So Human Services Department will be looking to target that. That's for a partial year of case management outreach. That's probably the equivalent of a half a year. I would anticipate in the mayor's proposed revised budget for 2016 that we will see each of these three areas addressed as well, because these are ongoing needs. The second council bill is another proviso that we did, and thank you to my colleagues for being willing to take a flyer on this. What we did as a council was park $175,000 that we said we would like to have used to expand shelter capacity outside of the city. So recognition that we're expanding shelter inside the city, but that we are also a regional partner. We are part of the governing board for the Committee to End Homelessness. We have the relationships that we have with the Sound Cities Association, with others who are also trying to figure out how to provide more services closer to home for people who are struggling and who end up homeless in their own communities. So this $175,000 we parked, and there is now a plan. We've had great feedback and great partnership now with United Way of King County and with King County itself. And United Way will be putting out, or has already put out, a request for proposals for, could be a responding agency that does work in surrounding King County. It could be a jurisdiction. It could be a municipality who comes forward and says, we have a plan for expanding shelter or establishing new shelter. There will be a requirement for a match, and we will be very attentive to figuring out how much our $175,000 can leverage in other funds and how many new shelter spaces that will yield for folks in crisis around the city who don't and shouldn't have to come into the city of Seattle to find the resources they're looking for. We hope that those resources can be found closer to home, near their family networks, and near the ways that we hope they'll be able to get out of homelessness more quickly. So again, those are the two items, and looking forward to putting that money out into the community. The $200,000 is already at work providing shelter, and the $175,000, I would hope that there would be a report back in the next few months about who the successful winners of the RFP have been and where those expanded shelter beds and new shelter beds are in the King County region. Happy to entertain any questions. We recommend passage for both of these.
Thank you. Questions or comments? Councilmember Rasmussen.
Thank you. Well, I strongly support this legislation. I've been meeting with and working with a number of the organizations that do provide services for homeless youth. In addition to the need for shelter, and the need is much greater than this supports, unfortunately, there's also the need for case management, mental health, and drug and alcohol services as well for the homeless youth. And I do intend during the course of the year to begin preparing legislation that would be included in our budget for next year to increase support of funding for shelter for homeless youth specifically, as well as for case management and for drug and alcohol assistance. And this is just the beginning of our, what I think is a very important and much needed emphasis on homeless youth.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Please call the roll on the passage of the bill. Item 4.
Godin.
Aye.
Harrell.
Aye.
Licata.
Aye.
O'Brien.
Aye.
Rasmussen.
Aye.
Sawant.
Aye.
Bagshaw.
Aye.
Clark.
Aye.
President Burgess.
Aye.
9 in favor, none
The
opposed.
bill passes, and the chair will sign it. Any questions or comments on item 5? Please call the roll on the passage of the bill.
Godin.
Aye.
Harrell.
Aye.
Licata.
Aye.
O'Brien.
Aye.
Rasmussen.
Aye.
Sawant.
Aye.
Bagshaw. Clark.
Aye.
Burgess. 9 in favor, none opposed.
The bill passes, and the chair will sign it. Thank you. The report of the Energy Committee. Please read item number 6.
The report of the Energy Committee, agenda item number 6, Council Bill 118351, relating to the City Light Department accepting various easements for overhead and underground electrical rights in King County, Washington, placing said easements under the jurisdiction of the City Light Department and ratifying confirming certain prior acts. The committee recommends this bill pass.
Thank you. Councilmember Sawant.
If it's okay, I'll speak to both this item and the item after it because it's the same. So both this item number 6 and item number 7, which are Council Bills 118351 and 118352, are bills that that the City Council needs to pass in order for allowing City Light, a public agency, to accept a package of easements. And these are basically necessary in order to allow City Light to place overhead and underground wires throughout the city. And the committee unanimously recommend that we pass both bills.
Thank you. Questions on item 6? Comments? Please call the roll on the passage of the bill.
Godin.
Aye.
Harrell. Licata. O'Brien. Rasmussen. Sawant.
Aye.
Bagshaw. Clark. President Burgess.
Aye.
9 in favor, none opposed.
The bill passes, and the chair will sign it. Please read item 7.
Agenda item number 7, Council Bill 118352, relating to the City Light Department accepting various easements for overhead and underground electrical rights in King County, Washington, placing said easements under the jurisdiction of the City Light Department and ratifying and confirming certain prior acts. The committee recommends the bill pass.
Thank you. Any further comments or questions? Please call the roll on the passage of the bill.
Godin.
Aye.
Harrell. Licata. O'Brien. Rasmussen. Sawant.
Aye.
Bagshaw. Clark. President Burgess.
Aye.
9 in favor, none opposed.
The bill passes, and the chair will sign it. The report of the Finance and Culture Committee. Please read item 8.
The report of the Finance and Culture Committee, agenda item number 8, Council Bill 118346, relating to the contracting indebtedness, amending Ordinance 124-125 to increase the authorized amount of interfund loans for the Alaskan Way Seawall Replacement Project and ratifying and confirming certain prior acts. The committee recommends the bill pass.
Thank you. Councilmember Licata.
This is a pretty straightforward ordinance. It relates, basically, it will be contracting indebtedness, amending the current ordinance 124125 to increase the authorized amount of interfund loans for the Alaskan Way Seawall Replacement Project. And just to note that these loans will be repaid through internal loans, and the loans will be requiring interest payment to be paid on those loans back to the general fund.
This is a situation where the seawall project is advancing much further than we thought, and we need money before we sell bonds, so that's why we're doing this. Questions or comments? Please call the roll on the passage of the bill.
Godin.
Aye.
Harrell. Licata.
Aye.
O'Brien. Rasmussen. Sawant.
Aye.
Bagshaw. Clark. President Burgess.
Aye.
9 in favor, none opposed.
The bill passes, and the chair will sign it. The report of the Transportation Committee. Please read item 9.
The report of the Transportation Committee, agenda item number 9, Council Bill 118354, granting Columbia Center Property LLC permission to continue to maintain and operate a pedestrian tunnel under and across 5th Avenue, south of Columbia Street, and under and across Columbia Street, east of 5th Avenue, for a 10-year term renewable for 2 successive 10-year terms, specifying the conditions under which this permit is granted, and providing for the acceptance of the permit and conditions and ratifying and confirming certain prior acts. The committee recommends the bill pass.
Thank you. Councilmember Rasmussen.
Thank you. This bill renews a term permit for the pedestrian tunnels that link the Columbia Tower, which is just to the north of us across the street, with the Seattle Municipal Tower and the Bank of America building, which are across 5th Avenue. The permit will be for a 10-year term, and that is renewable for 2 successive 10-year terms. The Columbia Center Property LLC, which will actually receive the permit, will pay the city an annual fee of $25,000, which is consistent with our Department of Transportation's fee methodology calculation formula. The agreement allows future property owners of the building to assume the term permit without the council needing to pass new legislation, and the committee recommends approval.
Thank you. Questions or comments? Please call the roll on the passage of the bill.
Godin.
Aye.
Harrell.
Aye.
Licata.
Aye.
O'Brien.
Aye.
Rasmussen.
Aye.
Sawant.
Aye.
Bagshaw. Clark.
Aye.
President Burgess.
Aye.
9 in favor, none opposed.
The bill passes and the chair will sign it. Please read items 10, 11, 12, actually through 14.
Agenda items 10 through 14, appointments 37 through 42, reappointments of Joanne Donahue and Paul Muldoon as members, Seattle Pedestrian Advisory Board for term of confirmation to April 1st, 2017. Appointment of David Edmonton as member, Seattle Pedestrian Advisory Board for term of confirmation to May 30th, 2016. And appointments of Catherine E. Morrison and Gordon Peddle Ford as members, Seattle Pedestrian Advisory Board for term of confirmation to April 1st, 2017. The committee recommends all these appointments be confirmed.
Thank you. Councilmember Rasmussen.
Thank you. These appointments are very important because our Pedestrian Advisory Board is going to be especially busy this year. The Department of Transportation will be updating the city's pedestrian master plan, and of course, they're going to be working closely with the advisory board as they prepare the revised pedestrian master plan. The two reappointments are Joanne Donahue. She is a mayoral reappointment. She's from the Leschi neighborhood and is employed by the private nonprofit organization Senior Services. Paul Muldoon is from Arbor Heights in West Seattle, and he brings decades of transportation planning and operations experience to the board, and he is a daily pedestrian walker. He says he walks between 4 and 8 miles each day throughout Seattle, and his appointment or reappointment is a council reappointment. We also have 3 new appointments, and they include David Amaton. He lives in the Finney neighborhood. He's a transportation planning analyst with the University of Washington, and he was a co-founder of Central Seattle Greenways and the University District Greenways. This is a mayoral appointment. Catherine Morrison lives in the Greenwood neighborhood and is the executive director of City Fruit, a nonprofit that reclaims unused fruit from urban orchards. She brings a public health background that includes work in assessing pedestrian environments, and this is a council appointment. Gordon Padelford lives on Capitol Hill and is a neighborhood support coordinator for Seattle Neighborhoods Greenway. He brings technical expertise on how to create safe and healthy streets for all, and he is a council appointment. The Transportation Committee unanimously recommends confirmation for all 5 individuals, the reappointments and the appointments.
Thank you. Questions or comments? All in favor of confirming the appointments in agenda items 10 through 14, vote aye.
Aye.
Opposed, vote no. The appointments are confirmed. Is there any other business to come before the council? Thank you. We are adjourned.